Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the launch event of the collaboration between Design Thinkers Academy in Singapore and Capstone People Consulting in India. My name is Daryl, and I am the co-founder of Design Thinkers Academy in Singapore. We are very proud to coincide this launch event with the COVID Pivot series, which is our second in the series of webinar. Today, it is an honor to have with us Dr. Sujaya from Capstone Consulting to speak to us. Next, please. Capstone People Consulting is a leading capability building and advisory services firm based in India, Mumbai, enabling clients to drive culture change through interventions in areas of leadership capability building, diversity and inclusion, and talent management through innovative learning. Let me first present to you our speaker. Dr. Sujaya Banerjee is the founder, CEO of Capstone People Consulting that works with leading organizations both in India and abroad on this developing leadership capabilities, drive culture change, and building diversity and inclusion. Dr. Banerjee is a TEDx speaker and author in the book Switch, How 12 Indian Companies Manage Change Successfully. She is also the founder of two leading community forums, the Learning and OD Roundtable with 25,000 members, 25,000 plus members, and also the Women Leadership Forum of Asia with over 12,000 men and women as members. Now allow me to hand over the screen to Dr. Sujaya, please.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you for handing over to me, and thank you for that very effusive introduction, and also for sort of explaining our collaboration and partnership so well to everyone who's joined in here today. So I want to start by welcoming people, everyone who's joining from different parts of the world, and a very significant group that's also joining from India. So thank you for being here. Thank you for celebrating this milestone for both the Design Thinkers Academy and us as we start our collaboration together. I think these are incredible times for this collaboration and this partnership, like Daryl was pointing out. Most organizations are looking to rebuild, to be able to research, to reinvent. And I think these are incredible times to be able to involve people and their creativity through the processes of solving problems and driving change. And so we see significant synergies in our partnership and also in the opportunities to be able to serve organizations both at the Singapore end and at the Mumbai end. So I think with that, I'm going to get on with the with the talk that I have planned for all of you here today. I must say we planned this as a two-part launch, which is thank you. We can see a lot of congratulations messages, Daryl, in the chat box. So thank you, everyone, for your good wishes. And, we're going to look to be able to work closely with each one of you so that we bring the benefit of both leadership insights and change and diversity and inclusion and human-centered design thinking to each one of the organizations that you're representing here today, and with partnering with you to be able to bring forth, to be able to drive further this positive journey of change and design thinking, keeping people right at the center of it. So, so we've got a two-part presentation here today. I do one in the morning, and Daryl's presentations later in the day. And that one is, again, another one not to be missed. So I'm going to recommend strongly that you all come in on board at 4:30 and join us one more time. Spend your late afternoon, creatively and constructively by listening to Daryl as he talks about design thinking and how empathy is so significant, in these times, in this economy. So do come back to be able to join that. The afternoon session was meant largely to be convenient to people who are joining from India. And the morning session, the early afternoon session was meant for people who are joining from across the world and from largely the Southeast Asian countries, Singapore and the neighboring countries. So welcome everybody one more time, and I'm delighted to be able to talk to you here today. Human-centric transformation first. What is has been transformation, intriguing time, the incredible times. To the course of my half an hour, 35-minute conversation here today, I'm hoping you're going to use the chat box to be able to share your views, your comments. You're a very experienced, very knowledgeable and a very erudite audience there. So please feel free to share your thoughts, your views as well. Post questions, please, so that we can make meaning together. And Daryl does have a kind of discussion, conversation, and some audience polls coming up right after my conversation. But I'm going to still, be the die-hard facilitator to ask you to keep a paper and pencil handy so that you can take notes as you go along if you do find some of the pointers that we're making here in this conversation meaningful here today. So let's move forward. Suneet, these are, Suneet, are you ready to move forward? Yeah. So that's my careerography, people. This is for those of you, who didn't get the fast-paced introduction through Daryl. I have about 3 decades plus of experience across organizations. Most of their names are up here. I'm also part of the Learning Innovations Lab at Howard. I'm also, I'm the founder of both the forums he spoke about, the Learning and OD Roundtable and the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. I'm also a significant contributor, founder to Leobel Productions, which is in the space of theater and films for social change. And we've got Switch, which is the book that I wrote, Switch, How 12 Indian Companies Manage Change Successfully. Move forward. So people, this is now, oft repeated. We are in incredibly and unbelievable turbulent times. We found ourselves really in the middle of a black swan event, something that we had not even imagined. And whether we've got 30, 40, 50 years of work experience here on this call, there's no one who can stand up to saying that this incredible black swan event is something that they've experienced here before. And even as I say this, I mean in the context of a global pandemic. But if you look at a snapshot of the kind of experiences we've been having, especially in the last 10 years, I'm just going to take you through a series of incredible black swan events that we've already been experiencing. So these times are emblematic of disruption, and disruptions being, the default experience of everyone globally. But I'm going to take a snapshot of just all the geopolitical, accelerated, sort of technology-enabled, innovation-enabled world events that we've experienced over a period of time. But let's just look at this snapshot first. And I'm going to take you to the 2008 financial crisis. I think this is a black swan event. None of us saw this coming. The Arab Spring, the rise of the Islamic State, the mass displacement of people across the Middle East, the Brexit vote, the trials and tribulations of the presidential elections, and the 2 candidates that really emerged. I think that was a huge surprise. The US-China trade war, and we'll have to wait to see where this goes in terms of the shape that it's taking. The prediction that the emerging markets would deaccelerate in terms of GDP, and now we don't know where that is going at all. And here we are in the middle of the largest ever global pandemic, the coronavirus. And why we've noted it in 2020, because this is when we've experienced the impact here in this region. It's called COVID-19 because it emerged in 2019. Move forward. And even as I share this, I'm tempted to share this slide with you, which is, as you can see, trend number 9. And, I remember having taken groups of leaders through this at different points in time over the past couple of years, where we spoke about resilience management being a top trend for leaders. And I must say, I was normally met with glazed looks when I spoke about this because, for most people, while the rest of the business-related trends were very exciting, resilience management didn't quite sort of sit as a priority. So even for those of us who have invested in disaster management plans, we have disaster recovery plans, we've had emergency response plans, we've had crisis management committees that we've created. Those of us who were ahead of the curve, we found ourselves better prepared, needless to say, in this incredible crisis. And lots of us have been caught off guard, even as the COVID-19 times came upon us. Move forward. So here we are, we've got the coronavirus pandemic, which has infected and killed millions of people across the world. It has stolen people of its livelihood and their lives, and has impacted adversely economies in every single part of the world. billions of people, everyone impacted with this global pandemic, this incredible black swan event that we are experiencing even as we speak. Move forward. And I want you to go through this with me. It's an incredible snapshot of statement made by someone. And I'll tell you in just a second who that is. But stay with me as I take you through this. For some organizations, near-term survival is the only agenda items. Others are peering through the fog of uncertainty, thinking about how to position themselves once the crisis is past and things return to normal. The question is, what will normal look like? While no one can say how long the crisis will last, what we find on the other side will not look like the normal of recent times. So this sounds like a very COVID-19 statement, right? So do you believe these words came out of just in the back of the current times, the current situations that we're all experiencing? Right? So wrong, because this was actually a statement captured made 11 years ago by Ian Davis on the back of the 2008 financial crisis. And my purpose of putting this up here was to say that, we've experienced black swan events before. Maybe not a global pandemic, but we've experienced black swan events before. We've experienced this kind of despair and helplessness. And we found our arms around it, and we can find our arms around it even today. So my purpose of this conversation here, as we talk about human-centric transformation, is to be able to share with you, research insights, thought leadership of various great thought leaders, combined with my own experiences and my own abilities to be able to connect up the dots. And we are going to talk about connecting up the dots in incredible manners today as we bring forth and manifest our own leadership. Move forward. So I'm going to take you through pedagogy which is unique for these times, because leadership today cannot draw from playbooks of the past. And the playbooks of the past are hugely bent towards command and control styles. They were written for another era. They were written for the manufacturing era, the industrial era. We're way beyond that. We're living in times where agility is going to matter more than anything else. We want networked organizations that are moving forward to solve problems creatively and who have the kind of leadership to be able to enable this to happen. So the pedagogy of this leadership is going to be very different. It cannot be gleaned from PowerPoints or from articles, or by reading or by copying or by keeping up with the Jones. This is going to be extremely personal pedagogy. It's going to involve for individual leaders to be able to connect up their, intuitive sense with their very intimate personal experiences. So it's going to be experiential. It's going to be intuitive, and it's going to require the ability to develop certain kinds of intelligences. So I'm going to start by being able to share 6 intelligences and 10 shifts that leadership will need to make in these times, even as we head towards recovery and we head towards resurgence. How do we create human-centric processes that will allow us to be able to move faster into recovery? So let me take you through the 6 intelligences that are going to be very key, and these are intimate, they're personal, they're experiential, they're intuitive. Now let's move forward. I'm going to take you to the first one, the contextual intelligence. And here when I say contextual intelligence, what I really mean is the leader's ability to be able to understand the context, the leader's ability to be able to connect up the dots of what it is that he or she is being able to experience in the moment. And it would require for the leader to have the discipline to be in the moment, to be in the present, so that he or she is able to draw from their own reservoir of experiences, to be able to understand and interpret in the moment, not have the luxury and understand that they do not have the luxury to take each issue into long-drawn meetings where there's analysis until paralysis and seldom any meaningful decisions emanating out of those long conversations. No time for that. And so in the moment, how quickly, with speed, with agility, can you connect up the dots so that you're able to understand what is actually going on, interpreting the environment and the context meaningfully so that you're able to do what is right. And here I want to draw from the training that fighter pilots receive, and they get trained in something called the OODA loop, which is, they don't have time to be able to consult people and to be able to ask. They need to be very competent in the moment to be able to act. And the speed of acting is what they taught through what is called the OODA loop. The ability to observe, the ability to orient yourself, the ability to decide, and the ability to act, all in the moment. And so the OODA is a nice indicator of what we really mean when we're talking about contextual intelligence, developing contextual intelligence. This may also involve having several mental rehearsals where you've imagined something like that happening before and may have made certain mental connections, which you now draw from the reservoir of those mental rehearsals to be able to find what you believe may be the right solution or may be the right decision that you need to make in the moment. Move forward. The next one I'm going to talk about is model intelligence. And it's because when there's a crisis, it is ever so easy to be biased for strategy and action. Whereas what you're going to be tested for in these times, more than ever before, is the vision you espoused, the purpose that you spoke about, and the values that you espouse for the organization. These are incredible times because, you're going to be, made accountable for what you said the organization's values were. And employees will, whether they verbalize it or not, hold you accountable for what you're saying and what you're doing in these times. So model intelligence, to be able to understand that what goes with the terrain now is that as we make our decisions as leaders, we must be making a meaningful social contribution. We can't be only focused on value creation. We've got to be able to do this by keeping people right at the center of all the decisions that we make. So model intelligence is going to play a very significant role, and leaders will need to be aware of this and imbibe this, integrate this in everything that they do, especially in the recovery and the resurgence phase. Move forward. Social and emotional intelligence. I mean, we just could not underline this better. If we do not involve people, especially in these times, we're going to come up with strategies or solutions that are going to come up crops. We will not find, the energy that we need for execution. These are incredible times to be able to use our abilities to be able to influence people both inside and outside the organization, win back our customers in a significant manner, manage our stakeholders, speak to our employees, influence them, act through empathy, dem compassion, also read between the surface and the emotional makeup in terms of wanting to individualize compassion to be able to understand what is impacting each person and how it is that you can actually manage this. So, lip service to people and lip service to compassion is not going to work anymore. Social and emotional intelligence right at the center of everything that we do and we espouse within the organization. Let's move forward. Generative intelligence. I mean, we spoke about innovation. I mean, even before the COVID-19 times, we were talking about innovation. All organizations thought it was really trendy to talk about innovation, but generative intelligence is the inherent ability to use the resources and the brilliance of your people in meaningful ways to solve problems. This actually requires the humility to be able to listen to people, and listening being a very integral skill, the ability to truly believe in the equality of people and their talents, and the ability to drive inclusion in terms of bringing this forth, not because we think it's great for branding for the organization or branding from an employer brand perspective, but because we require it and we believe we require it for survival and for growth within the organization. So innovation is not a choice anymore. The organizations that are able to integrate with its talent, no matter what level of the organization, and integrate their brilliance, are the ones who are going to be able to find the solutions faster and move into recovery phases faster. So the lip service phase is over. Generative intelligence, which is how do I use the brilliance of the people who work with me. Move forward. Technological intelligence. This is another one we've been playing lip service to for a very long time, but these are times for leaders to be able to develop a new set of literacies around understanding how their organizations are going to amplify new technologies and bringing these technologies as solutions within organizations. Not because they're trending, not because they're great to have. There's going to be very limited wallet share that's going to be available to be able to do this. So unless they're going to improve operational efficiencies, it's not going to be of any use. But creating this literacy, the technological literacy, is going to be extremely important to think technology as solutions during this time. So technological intelligence. Let's move forward. Transformative intelligence, this is going to be so overarching, the ability to be able to understand where it is that you need to drive change and integrate the right people to be able to do this. Leaders need to be evangelists of change within organizations today. They need to be people who don't just talk about change, but who actually live that by being able to have the ability to integrate the right people, create a sense of urgency around change. Don't just talk about it in town halls or in catch-up meetings, but then you see no action coming out of that. Drive a sense of urgency around transformation and pick on the transformative, demonstrate transformative intelligence by picking on the opportunities to be able to drive change within organizations. Move forward. And so all of these, finally, these intelligences need to reside in an overarching belief and philosophy of optimism and hope. I'm going to give this a bit of a pause here, because while I've been talking about all the intelligences that are going to get us to be able to get our businesses back on track through the recovery and the resurgence phase, I have to mention this, because one of the other fallout of being in the middle of a crisis, when you try some, you pivot, some of it works, some of it doesn't, you pivot again, requires very high levels of optimism. And this is one energy that teams are counting on to come forth from their leaders. There is nothing more discouraging than to be led by somebody who's full of negative talk. And even as I'm saying this, this is not uncommon across organizations. And like I'm saying, in a crisis, it is easy to be able to not be aware of our negative talk. It is not uncommon for people on doom and gloom, to be fed with doom and gloom conversations during catch-up meetings or in the intimacy of what happens within teams. There is enough and more gloom and doom conversations, which can be so discouraging. They can be so despairing for people who are within teams. So I'm going to try and advocate something that positive psychologists have been advocating for a while, which is learned optimism. And this is a belief. What is advocated is that it is possible to be able to learn optimism by being able to develop and cultivate the talent for positive outlooks towards life by being more conscious about your own negative talk and reducing it considerably. And over a period of time, you can change this habit and become a more optimistic, a more positive person. I'm reminded of a time where we worked with an organization that was suddenly acquired over a very short period of time. And at the end of the first year, and lots of trials and tribulations, on both sides with employees and the leaders, there was, they had the global organization had a research study to be able to figure how organizations they had acquired during that year had fared. So it was like a employee engagement kind of a study. It's very interesting that this organization turned out with very high engagement scores in the first year, where they've actually managed heavy trials, tribulations, change of an unprecedented kind, lots of despair, lots of challenges. And I was interested to be able to know what do they do? What enabled them to be able to do this? And of course, I work with the organization. They happen to mention how a single line that they learned, during one of the programs or the conversations that we've had during the year had stuck and got repeated from one leader to another and from one group to another, and almost became like a maxim within the organization. For those of you in the audience who are familiar with appreciative inquiry, this is one of the principles of appreciative inquiry, and it's called the Constructionist Principle, which is the ability of the leader to make meaning of the environment. That the leader constructs reality for people. And so what words do we use when we construct this reality for people? And the power of this principle is that it makes leaders aware of their utterances. And so learned optimism is another way of being really aware of your utterances. It has a beautiful byline, which is words create our world. And so, it's about being able to become more aware about how we are defining realities, because this energy has significant impact within organization in terms of not just optimism, but morale. And I believe low morale is a risk in these times. And I'm sure a lot of you in the audiences will agree with me that we cannot afford the risk of low employee morale. And so optimism, all the intelligences to reside within hope and optimism. There's a beautiful saying that leadership is about stating reality and then giving hope. So I'm going to try and get you to note that down so that, we make that the centrifugal engine of everything that we're trying to do in the context of developing ourselves and leaders to be able to drive change and build ourselves back as we emerge from the COVID-19 crisis. Move forward. You can move forward. So crisis does not just build character, it reveals it. And there's no doubt in my mind that these are incredible times to be able to build talent, to be able to actually use this crisis as a crucible for building leadership within the organization. But crisis does not just build character. It actually is an incredible time to be able to reveal it. And here I want to share what is easily the most important slide and what it is that I'm trying to communicate here with all of you today. Move forward. The COVID-19 times, this pandemic, we have no control over it. We also don't have control over basic human needs that are severely impacted as a result of this crisis. The feeling of not being safe, social belonging, financial security, all of this has been very significantly debilitated at these times. And despite our best intentions, at least as leaders, there is little or absolutely nothing that we can do to be able to try and positively impact how people are feeling around safety, safety of their own and safety of their families, how they're feeling about belonging in this society, the social distance and not having the ability to connect with people. I mean, all of this is very severely, an impediment to mental health for lots of people who may not be expressing this openly. Financial security has been impacted. Various organizations have taken pay cuts. There are up to 50% reductions in salaries. There are significant challenges that people are facing in terms of financial security. So success in these trying times cannot be defined by traditional growth. I'm going to repeat this line. Success in these trying times cannot be defined by our traditional before COVID-19 dimensions of success. Success in these times needs to be measured by how we ease the human experience of this crisis, making human-centered approaches for problem solving all the more relevant in the context of how it is that we manifest leadership during these times. Move forward, and I'm going to, at this point from here on, share with you 10 shifts. And even as I'm sharing these shifts with you, I want you to know that, these are continuums. So you need to record the form to do as a continuum and try and reflect to be able to see where do you stand on this continuum. Also, I want to be able to point out for those of you who may argue that this was all important even in the pre-COVID era, here's what I have to share. That they were, and we perhaps talked about it because we've been talking VUCA for a long time. We've now experienced a very significant VUCA. So I must say that all that you're hearing here, and if some of it sounds familiar from the past, well, it was good to have, and, some of us had the choice to still not do it. Well, now it's a question of survival, and this needs to be reflected on and managed. So see them as continuums, and I'm going to take you through each one of these shifts. The first one is the fragile, non-resilient, unprepared leader who kind of reacted to the crisis by saying, how did I ever get here? Yeah, what caused this to happen? Yeah, who caused this? And I think this is a meaningless dialogue that we've all gone on about for a very long time, which is to be able to say, how did this ever happen? How did we come to this? The truth is that this happened in the December of 2019. Some say even earlier. Many countries in the region were already, and I'm talking about primarily India now, which is for us, many big countries in the region had already started taking significant measures, including work from home and lockdowns. And despite that, we found an incredible number of companies and leaders off guard. They found themselves off guard with this crisis. So at one end, we have the unprepared, fragile leader who, it does not know what really to do in the middle of a crisis. If we had more time, I'd talk about planned helplessness, but that is essentially the reaction that you have when there's adversity. And you're ill-prepared, and your locus of control is external, which is life happens to me, life unfolds onto me, and so on. And at the other end, we have the resilient, and as Taib says, the anti-fragile leader. The anti-fragile leader, and especially given the fact that what we're in the center of is going to be here for a long haul. This is not going away in a hurry. For those of us who believing that things will be better in the next couple of months, we're all hoping it will be, but this is contingent on vaccines and larger solutions, which are still not on the anvil. And so we got to be able to prepare for a long haul with this. But here's what I have to say. Anti-fragile mindsets is about being able to know that not only will you be able to triumph the challenge or the crisis, but you get better with every crisis. That you actually improve and you take it on as a challenge and you go all out to be able to get the better of and on top of the challenge. And this is at the other end of the spectrum. So from fragile to anti-fragile, from unprepared to the prepared leader who actually experiences and enjoys a crisis. And by enjoy, what I simply mean is takes it on as a challenge, brings out the best in its people, and figures ways to be able to handle it. And the questions on this side is more to do with what is the outcome I want most from what's going on right now? What outcome, other outcome, can also be as good? What stands in the way of making these outcomes happen right now? Who do I know who has overcome similar obstacles? And so to be able to actually rationally and as much emotionally access and go to the challenge with a lot of courage, confidence, and like I said, enjoy the challenge, get better with every challenge, get better with every crisis. Move forward. Let me take you to Women's Leadership Shift 2. Sunil?
Just a moment.
Okay.
Sorry, we're just having a bit of a technical difficulty.
Okay. Just give us a second. We're just coming to Shift 2.
Very interesting insights at the moment, Dr. Sujaya. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's interesting.
Yes,
During
thank
this
you.
time, there are also lots of unprecedented events that's happening as well.
Yes.
I'm just wondering what the technical situation is being addressed. How do we deal with some of these unprecedented events, especially things like physical distancing, or something that has not really been seen in the past, not with SARS, not with any of those kind of global pandemics. This is going to be something that organizations will face.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that when we talk about social intelligence and we talk about, we continue talking about, emotional intelligence, I think especially when you're in the midst of remote teams, this is going to be ever so important to be able to still remain connected, still knowing what's going on. And, we need an individual connection here. Whether it comes to customers, whether it's coming to, whether it comes to our talent, we need to be able to remain connected and integrated in very significant ways. Suneet, we've got a question here. I'm just saying whether we can, any example during these times where you leverage the UDA model to solve a problem. So I must say that I teach this to a lot of leaders, and we've had significant. I think it landed really well, the idea of UDA, because that is in the nature of what we're experiencing at this time, which is having leaders to be able to use their contextual intelligence in the moment, and I must say that UDA kind of gives you a framework to be able to understand that you don't have time to be able to use analytics and long drawn conversations around being able to orient or to be able to sort of decide. You don't have and the sort of gap between deciding and act. You don't have the luxury of time between that. So I think there's been a significant number of people who've come back saying that it gave them a framework in their that they use it, that they apply it. And I'm glad somebody picked on the UDA, because I think that kind of summarizes very clearly what it is that we're experiencing at this time. I'm kind of going to go to the second question, which says, like the framework with 6 intelligences, essentially it calls for heightened levels of situational leadership skills. Perhaps if one were to think about the how to build onto the what, it can be useful. And this is Rajesh asking the question, and I agree with you, Rajesh. This is normally a full-fledged 2 days program, and we're trying to give you some of the hows and some of the whats, and we'll surely come in to be able to look at the hows if we invest in a longer period of time. So let's just get back to the leadership shifts, and here is number 2. And this time round, thank you. We've got Nagrat saying UDA is a fantastic model and it's a significant takeaway for him from the first part of the session. So like I said, to jog your memories, leadership shift 1 is from being fragile, unprepared to being anti-fragile and resilient leadership. So we're looking at 2 ends of that spectrum. Here is our leadership shift number 2, which is from being a directive, centralized kind of leadership, the command and control style of leadership, to a style of distributed power, empowering and inspiring teams to be able to work together. And this is a trend we're already seeing within organizations, that, clearly the power shifting from the center to where the problems are. And increasingly more and more organizations to remain nimble, to become more agile to problem solving, are allowing teams who are closest to the problems to be able to solve it. But I'm afraid this is not a common trend across the board. Lots of people need to be able to start relooking at this business of only the leaders will decide what needs to get done. But we don't have the time for this in the times we are existing in. And if we really want our recovery phase to be impactful, and we want to be able to struggle and have less struggle and less despair around it, directive, centralized leadership to distributed power and empowering and inspiring teams who are closest to the problems to be able to solve problems. And you're going to see a lot of the intelligences play out in the shifts that I'm going to be talking about. And, this is about social intelligence. This is about emotional intelligence. This is as much about generative intelligence, because it's the ability to recognize that you need to be able to get closest to the place of problems to be able to solve them. Let's move forward, Sunil. Leadership shift 3. Leadership that drives strictly mandated change agendas. And I've seen an incredible number of organizations there where leaders believe that they know how to drive change, but they're actually driving mandated change agendas. That is already coming from the top, the board's decided it, or the international headquarters has decided it, and so it's mandated, and there is a consequence for no action when you try and drive change. Now this I'm going to put at one end of the spectrum, because it's far more easier to drive this. And we go to the other end, talk about adaptive, flexible leadership, credible evangelists, which is if you're saying this needs to be changed, people believe you, they support you, they put their might behind it. You're somebody who challenges the status quo, asks questions. Even if you have legacy systems, processes that have worked well in the past, you're still asking questions, difficult questions, and making difficult choices to be able to constantly adapt, constantly reinvent, constantly pivot to be able to drive change and find new solutions for the organization. So mandated change, and we can have a perception of being able to be great at being able to manage change, but we're talking about this kind of nimble pivoting that is right at the center of what's required in these times. Move forward. Hierarchical bureaucratic leadership, which kind of slows everything down, especially the flow of information within the organization. I'm going to get that on one side. Hierarchical bureaucratic. I mean, if this describes you or some variant of this describes your organization, right off to highly connected leaderships, connected to customer, employee, stakeholder. You get the information directly from people. You don't need wire medias. They don't travel through different layers to be able to reach the leaders. You don't have a situation of Chinese whispers there. You have real information because you're connected. You know people down the line. You're able to capture the right kind of information so that you're able to act. So this shift is about the shift of information within the organization and less of this hierarchical, only the leaders know what's really going on, because it slows down problem solving, slows down decision making, right out to a leader who knows what's happening at which level and knows how to empower people so that they're able to solve problems and they're able to make decisions faster. Let's move forward. The stoic, uncommunicative leadership, with a restrictive communication style. This is not uncommon. This is, where leaders talk only to the next level. In one of the organizations that I worked for, there's a nice phrase that came out where the employees said that the leaders within our organization are like God. They're there, but you don't get to see them. And so this is that kind of leadership which only talks to the communication. The large amount of need to know kind of communication is highly restricted. And at the other end, we're looking at an over-communicative leader, a leader who brings forth compassion, communicates compassionately. And we're seeing already some incredible examples of this. One organization was saying to me that the head of sales, who's a hardcore numbers person, spent his catch-up meeting last week, spending 20 minutes just talking about health with his employees. And I'm saying we're already seeing these shifts. But this is going to be so important. Over-communicative leader, frequent, many times, come back as clarity emerges, to be able to come back and talk to people and let them know what's happening. Get them to be able to understand that we don't have the entire picture. We're going to try and reveal this to you as we go along. And that's how it becomes credible information. That's how it becomes optimistic and compassionate information. Let's move forward. And the sixth one, and this is easily one of my favorites, right? The omniscient, invisible, omnipotent leader, the person who has all the right answers, right? And we have a problem with this. You know, our larger ethos is feudal, and so it's very easy to have this, which is the command and control leader, the leader who has all the right answer, the leader who's directive, the leader who will tell you what you need to really do. And on the other end, the vulnerable leader, you know, the authentic leader, the leader who says, well, I don't really know. Let's figure this out together. Here, I'd like to bring up the concept of fixed mindset and growth mindset. This is incredible work done by Carol Dweck of Stanford University, and it's her 40 years of labor in terms of having, you know, sort of revealed the insights from her research, where she says that there are people, you know, who have a fixed mindset. These are people who believe that knowledge, abilities, you know, your intelligence is fixed, and you're not able to actually improve it or grow it. And then there are people who have a growth mindset who believe that knowledge or you know, your experiences, you know, can be built, I mean, over a period of time. Your intelligence can be built over a period of time, and that people who do more work around this are likely to build their abilities and become better. Now, how does this translate in the context of leadership? Yeah, why is this important? Why is it important to have a growth mindset, particularly in these times? Is because of the way in which people with fixed mindsets or growth mindsets engage with the way in which they make effort. For example, the ones with the fixed mindset. Let me take you through 4 dimensions in which they differ. So fixed mindset leaders, right, do not believe in making too much of an effort. If anything requires too much of an effort, they're really upset about that because they don't believe that you can actually learn anything new. So they have a problem with making additional effort to learn something new. Challenges can really upset them because they want to look good at all times. So they don't want to be up against a situation which will erode the way in which they appear because they want to look good. So performance and high performance at the cost of everything so that we look good is very, very imperative for the fixed mindset leader. Mistakes and how, you know, fixed mindset leaders engage with mistakes is to hide them, to not let people know that the mistakes were made, to appear invincible, like I said, omniscient, omnipotent, you know, absolutely knows everything. And so will not submit to mistakes, will not admit to mistakes, will hide them and not talk about them. And the greatest is how these leaders deal with feedback. So they have a problem with feedback. They think it's personal and they think someone has got it against them because of which this feedback's coming through. They do not believe feedback, they don't act on feedback, they get upset with feedback, and typically are dismissive of feedback. The growth mindset leaders, on the other hand, you know, are willing to learn anything that's new, which they don't yet know. They love a challenge. They want to get their arms around it. They do believe that you can learn something new as you go along, and there could be things we don't know when we start. They have the ability to admit to mistakes. They have the ability to show up vulnerability. They have the ability to say, well, we didn't quite get this right. I'm sorry. So we're going to try this again. They work on feedback. They reflect on feedback. They source feedback. They want to know because feedback completes their thinking. So fixed mindset and growth mindset leaders. I'm going to give you an example of a fixed mindset leader. And even as I give you this example, I want you to watch closely and even and even consider my disclaimer with this, right? So the video I'm about to show you actually shows you a very leading political personality. Don't start yet, Sunit. So it's going to show you a very leading political personality. Now, the sad part is that, you know, when we're trying to demonstrate a particular kind of behavior, it's so much easier to get a political leader or somebody who's head of state because they get recorded all the time. I can tell you this as much happens inside business organizations. We just don't have recordings of how it is that people might really behave inside organizations. Now, I must say that the individual concerned is immensely admired by many people. It easily occupies one of the most powerful seats in the world, all right, and has a very significant majority who also support what it is that he does politically. For those of you who are confused about this individual, I'm going to recommend that you read Charlie Kirk's book called, it actually, I mean, the name's going to come, but Charlie Kirk, and he's written in defense of Donald Trump's leadership. And I'm going to recommend strongly that you read and access, Charlie Kirk's book, just to get another perspective on Donald Trump's leadership. So this video depicts Donald Trump without taking away any credit from his achievements, and the fact that he is occupying one of the most incredibly powerful positions in the world. I'm just going to come back. Somebody asked the name of the book. I'll just watch this video. I'll come back to you with the name of the book, right? So watch this, everybody. This is what I mean when I'm talking about fixed mindset.
Nobody knows this stuff better than me.
Nobody knows more about taxes than I do, and income than I do.
Nobody knows more about construction than I do.
Nobody knows more about campaign finance than I do. I know more about drones than anybody. Nobody knows much more about technology, this type of technology, certainly, than I do. Nobody knows more about technology than me. Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me. I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me. I understand things. I comprehend very well, okay? Better than, I think, almost anybody.
And by the way, who knew the other side of the picture better than me? I knew it.
Nobody knows more about environmental impact statements than me. I understand the power of Facebook, maybe better than almost anybody. I know more about renewables than any human being on Earth. Nobody knows more about polls than me. I know more about courts than any human being on Earth. I know more about steelworkers than anybody that's ever run for office. I know more about golf than Obama knows. Nobody knows more about banks than I do. Nobody knows more about trade than me. Well, obviously, he doesn't know about nuclear weapons. I know more about nuclear weapons than he'll ever know.
I understand the tax laws better than almost anyone.
Who knows more about lawsuits than I do? I'm the king. I know more about offense and defense than they will ever understand.
And I understand the other side. Perhaps I understand it better than anybody else.
I was the fair-haired boy. Nobody knows more about it than me. I know more than these politicians. These guys don't know anything.
I know a lot. I know more than I'm ever going to tell you. The truth is, I'm actually a modest person, very modest. It's true.
All right, so, you kind of know what it is that I'm talking about here. And I can tell you that a very significant number of people within organizations are up against leaders who believe that they know everything. So I'm going to leave that sixth, leadership shift with you, which is the difference between leaders that show the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Move forward, Sunil. Let's move with that to our leadership shift number 7. And here I want you to look at inward-looking institution building, these large monolithic organizations who have a sense of pride about our way of doing this, our culture, and so on. Very reluctant to rewrite old playbooks, risk-averse, control-oriented, and the rest. So inward-looking institutions, believe in something that they're going to do long-term because they're building an institution, and all in good faith. And there was an age and time when you could be like this. And I'm not saying that the nimbleness that we're talking about or the speed of being able to be, adaptable is at the cost of wanting to build institutions. I'm just saying you can't be just this. You can't afford to be just this, which is inward-looking, slow, control-oriented, risk-averse, and so on. So I'm going to put this at one end, and at the other end of the spectrum, strategically and tactically adaptable organization that's able to pivot. They don't have a sense of pride, we used to do this before and now. No, if it doesn't work, we change it. We pivot to do what is required at this point in time to be able to make things better. Tactically and strategically being able to pivot is the kind of organization and leadership that we're seeing at the other end. Move forward. Leadership shift 8. Aspirationally, digitally savvy leadership. Good to have automation. Typically, migrants to technology making decisions on what to do. Oftentimes, this is peppered by keeping up with the Jones. If competition has something, then we want to have it. There really isn't a clear strategy on digitization. And more often than not, they're, like I said, migrants to technology who are making these decisions. And at the other end, I'm looking at a shift where digital transformational leadership enables a nimble, digitized, and automated organization that is allowing technology to solve real problems and enabling technology to be able to improve performance. So we're looking at a shift which is about being able to do what is needed in the hour and to use technology, and amplifying technology in this situation is going to be so incredibly important. Move forward, leadership shift number 9. And in 9, we're going to talk about aspirational innovation, which is we talk all the time about, yes, you know, we really value innovation, we want innovation, but we actually in our processes value consensus. And in our processes, we value groupthink and everything that's going to come so incredibly in the way of innovation. And from this at one end to innovation savvy leadership that understands that this is an imperative for the times that we exist, that it's imperative for survival and growth, and is able to drive innovation, use the brilliance of people to be able to find new creative solutions to lingering problems. And finally, leadership shift number 10, and I cannot underline this enough, which is from playing lip service to health and safety. You know, savvy leaders who talk about, yes, we're committed to employee health, you know, with limited or no concrete actions at ground levels, to now compliance. And there would be some degree of compliance related you know, health and safety initiatives that we're taking. We're compelled to take it by the law now, and that's why I've called it compliance related, to the shift where we're talking about leadership that is committed to health and safety of its people in the long run, and puts down not just processes, programs, but resources to be able to enable that to happen. And what is the differentiating part about both ends of the spectrum is that this is not just compliance oriented, this is compassion oriented. Because when our commitment to health and safety is compassionate, then the actions that we take are considerably different. The actions that we take are more authentic, they're more personal, they cater to individual, they're human-centric. And so with this, I'm going to bring together the, you know, the 6 intelligences that I took you through and the 10 leadership shifts. And this conversation is clearly incomplete without talking to you about compassion. So move forward, Suneet, that these are incredible times to show compassion to just about anyone. Not just our employees, not just our teams, but just about anyone. And I know that the definition of employee is so significantly expanded because people who work with you part-time, they work, you know, your gig economy, your people who work as suppliers, your people who work as vendors. It's about being able to show compassion to that entire universe. And I know compassion is a weak word in the corporate world because we tend to believe that you can have sympathy, empathy for people, but, you know, beyond a point where you're here to do business. And that is so, that feeling or that sentiment or that mindset is so incredibly in the way of us being able to manifest compassion in the workplace. I'm going to urge leaders who are listening to this conversation to be able to look at compassion in combination with accountability. So compassion with accountability works brilliantly well. And consider that. So we don't not perform, we don't not want to do business, we don't not want to recover, we don't not want to research, we don't not want to triumph this, but we want to do this right and we want to do it with compassion. So I'm going to leave you with a thought. Move forward, and this is pretty much my last slide, Daryl. Compassion is a business skill. It is not a soft skill. And I know we've been under the misconception for a very long time that showing compassion is about being able to show the soft side to us. And I'm telling you today that compassion is going to be the most significant business skill you're going to require in these times to be able to make decisions that are human-centric and decisions that reek of moral intelligence. So I think with that, I'm going to hand over right back to Daryl with a very great thank you to everyone in the audience who've listened to me. So Daryl, right back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sujaya. Well, we've got quite a good number of questions that are really very interesting, talking about the different styles of leaderships. And I think I saw one not too long ago that mentioned a bit about inclusive leadership. And thank you very much for sharing about this whole need for compassion in this particular era of leadership. Now, I think I have one question that comes to my mind, because people are in this state of, you know, feeling a sense of hopelessness, a sense of isolation amidst this lockdown period. So I have this question: how might organizations and leaders be able to create this sense of hope and optimism that you spoke about a while ago? Maybe we can do that. Let's poll. Let's poll the audience first. We have a question that's coming up. Let's poll the audience.
Okay.
So,
all right, we have an audience question. Do you agree most leaders can end up with negative talk even as they believe they are realists?
Wow.
All right, if they've all voted, do we want to see what comes out of this?
I think so. Okay, let's put them on screen. Wow.
All right. You have a staggering 91% agreeing with this.
So how then would organizations be able to start this, creating this sense of hope and optimism?
Yeah. And you know, I want to add to that what we just saw in the poll right now, because, you know, realists, with people who call themselves realists, realist really means that you don't use the filter of positive or negative in your conversation. That you have the ability to be able to share discordant information with hope. And I think that that is an incredible art. And I think the way in which organizations can actually build optimism and hope is by getting the tipping point group to demonstrate this, which is being extremely conscious of their utterances. And to be able to be sure that, you know, this is, people are going to watch you closely in terms of what is it that you're saying needs to get done next, or how are you reading the environment, how are you reading the climate, you know, what do you have to say to us about what is your take? And that take needs to be framed, you know, with hope, with optimism, even as you state, like I said, state reality, but then build hope. So I think utterances, just being conscious about utterances. I mean, you talk about planned optimism. It is creating a habit, and you know, all habits take about 21 days, and that's research. So say for 21 days, is that if you find yourself into negative talk, you roll back and say, I'm not going to say this, I'm going to say it another way, because this can really severely impact the people I'm talking to. It's also about being able to deliberately cultivate, and planned optimism is indeed that, which is, you know, deliberately cultivating the talent of developing a positive worldview and having a positive view to what it is that's really happening. So I think it needs to be done over a period of time. The tipping point group within the organization needs to do it in a hurry, because like I said, that, you know, hopelessness and low morale is a risk, and we can ill afford that risk as we're trying to triumph the current such situation.
Well, you mentioned a bit about positive worldview. So it brings to my mind that whole concept of having that growth mindset, having the right mentality in addressing the different challenges that we have come in face with, and how do we deal with it at that moment, I think. So actually, I have this other question. What are some ways organizations can develop the growth mindset? And what are some of these indicators? I have an idea on my mind that the leader that creates this growth mindset to be something very different. It's no longer the traditional leadership that we're looking at. So I'm going to put up another second poll question that we really want to ask. Let's put up the second poll question, please.
Okay. Do you agree not wanting to show vulnerability, which is heroic leadership is in the way of leaders demonstrating growth mindsets? Okay.
Let's give it another 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's show some of the results. It's interesting that we have 53% who say yes, and 20% about 38% who says no. Well, I'm just wondering what's your take on this?
Yeah, I'm not surprised with the poll outcome, because, you know, most organizations are up against directive leadership. You know, and people believe that if I'm in power, then I need to have the right answers. If I'm the senior most, then I ought to tell people what really needs to get done. And I think we valued experience for a very, very long time. In the industrial era, it made sense. And I think in the new playbooks, we need to be able to rewrite those playbooks and have the courage to rewrite those leadership playbooks, which is to be able to acknowledge that in the information era and the knowledge era, there's nothing to say people who have 30 or 40 years of experience know better than the others. And I think these are incredibly equal playing fields, you know, these Corona times, the COVID-19 times, because no one's experienced this before. And so this kind of creates an equal playing field for everyone to be able to come in to try and figure responses or answers together. And I think it's important for leaders to be able to open up to the sheer brilliance that they have across levels, to be able to believe and build a smart organization. You know, I've always said that you're as smart as your frontline. So how smart is your frontline? That's how smart the organization really is. So I think time for inclusion, time for letting go, time for being able to allow for this distributed authority, time to integrate the brilliance of people at different corners of your organization and outside.
I love that. In fact, I've been seeing this particular word transparency appearing in the chat several times throughout the whole chat. And I kind of also realized that these are the times where I think leaders may not even know of the real situations of what's happening. I think there are many more new considerations in this period, considerations like family, considerations like relationships, where traditional leaders would probably be able to compensate these through some of these compensation and benefits of the system itself. But in these times where your family takes perhaps a precedence over the work that you're supposed to deliver, even more so over the compensation that you're getting, I think leaders today have to really accept that we need to be a lot more human-centric to really understand. These are the little... Right.
Yeah, well, so true.
I have these other questions. You spoke about digital leadership in the very final last one. I think I have this question because in Singapore, there are many solution providers in digital solutions, right? We have our apps, we have our various tools to help us with accounts, with word processing, everything, communications, meetings, now even a collaborative space, right? Now the question is this: what should be some of the key focuses of digital leaderships in organizations in this new era where we have so many technological solutions? Now, maybe before we do that again, let's poll. Okay. Let's poll our audience again.
Yeah, sure.
Me, please.
Do you agree most key decision makers in organizations are novice users to technology and struggle with thinking digital solutions? Do you believe decision makers themselves are novice users to technology and struggle with thinking digital solutions?
Let's give it another 10 seconds. 5. Okay, let's close the poll and let's see what's the results. Well, 76% says yes. Most of key decision makers are novice users, and 11. Well, that's not really a surprise, isn't it?
Yes. So, I mean, this doesn't come as a surprise at all, frankly. And I think that this is, this is another incredible opportunity to show growth mindset, in my opinion, which is to say, it's fine, we don't know it, but we'll build this literacy and, we'll amplify the technology, we'll find solutions, and to also let go of some of that centralized power that we're so fond of holding close to our heart, which is to start now letting people who know what to do and what solutions can really work, and start kind of, integrating people, like I'm saying, that pull in people who have the talent, pull in people who can give you the solutions, open up to being vulnerable to say, this is not my scenario. I want to be able to learn about this. But to also understand that, there's going to be limited wallet share. That's the way I see it through this space. And so, digitization for the sake of digitization, or because we want to look savvy, or because we want to look cool, I think there's no time for that. We've got to be able to now amplify digitization to get closer to our customers, to get closer to our employees, to our talent. And there's an incredible set of solutions, especially, in a space of work from home and social distancing. We're going to have to use technology in a very savvy way. And so another opportunity for leaders to show growth mindset and their vulnerability to be able to integrate people who can help them with these solutions.
One of the thoughts that came to my mind about digital solutions. So I have been also one of the consumer of digital solutions, and also perhaps even a subscriber of digital solutions in my company in Singapore. And it's always when you adopt that solution that you realize that, hey, this is not the best solution. Then how? I think that's a very real situation. Today you buy that product, tomorrow you realize that it's more or less obsolete. Yeah. How then do we deal with this situation as a leader of the organization? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I think that I would kind of apply some good design thinking to arriving at this solution to begin with, which is to be able to integrate, my people, understand them, understand what the requirement really is, and then be ready to be able to pivot as we go along. A lot of the technology runs its course, and it's time to be able to pivot around because your own circumstances have changed so dramatically. So I think that building that savviness is going to be very, very important. And I think accepting that I don't know so that I can integrate with people who do know, whether they're inside or outside the organization, and I find these solutions because technology is going to be a very integral player to be able to remain connected, to get timely information, to remain nimble, to be agile, which is the need of the hour at this time. So there is no replacement for the technology intelligence. All those I've heard of incredible stories of organizations that were dragging their feet for 2 and 3 years over a particular technology platform. Within 2 or 3 weeks during the lockdown, they've got it up and running. So we've got some incredible stories of how organizations have pivoted, they have reinvented, they've gotten nimble, and they've come out with what it is that they needed to do with technology. Even projects which were, or even decisions that were taking very long. I mean, one organization spoke about how they were dragging their feet on the work from home decision for the past 3 years. And they constantly had, each time they'd reach a point, the leadership would push it back saying, not for our organization, can't work for our business. This is not going to ever be possible. And it took one day for suddenly to have the entire thousands of people organization being mobilized to work from home. And they were able to make it happen. I mean, they got the technology to be able to get aligned. They got people to get aligned. They got leaders to get aligned. So, sometimes, like we say, that, necessity is a mother of invention. And sometimes you need a crisis and you're back against the wall to be able to do things you wouldn't ordinarily do.
So I just seen a few comments as well about digital transformation. My question is this: digital transformation, or is it simply digital automation? That's really a question that's always on my mind. Because if we frame digital as the reason for transformation, then there isn't really a transformation, isn't it? Yeah. You are just adopting a digital solution. I'm wondering to myself, and thank you for speaking about design thinking. I think this really takes on a role. What is it that you are trying to produce for your customers, whether internally or externally?
Yes.
I think that's a very question. I have a question up here as well that talks about people are organizations' best asset.
Yes.
Does this hold true? And how does COVID leadership demonstrate commitment to this asset these times?
Yeah, I think this question is completely related to what I've been trying to say through my talk, which is that you don't have the choice, to not be human-centric to everything that you do. And, I pointed out to a slide which said that especially in times where people's safety is impacted, where their health is impacted, this is a heightened sense of mortality that everyone's experiencing, and they're extremely scared for themselves and their families. Social belonging is impacted, financial security is impacted. How can our dimensions of success remain the same as they were before COVID-19? These are going to have to considerably integrate solutions, making the experience of this crisis, far easier for people, even as we go on with the business of business. So keeping people at the center of this is going to be extremely important. And of course, we want to triumph this challenge. And of course, we've got our arms around Black Swan events in the past, and I mentioned that. And we want to be able to get over this one too, and I'm confident we will. I think it's important to bear in mind that we've never ever triumphed a Black Swan event that was in the middle of a global health pandemic. And the fact that this is a global health pandemic calls for, before more than any time else, calls for human centricity, compassion, right at the center of everything that we do. So I'm also going to underline the model intelligence that I spoke about, which is what we're doing right? Is it aligned to what we've been saying we really stand for? And are we doing good upon people? I know there are all kinds of definitions of compassion, and I follow a very simple one. That's the one I teach, which is that compassion is simply being authentically interested in the well-being of the other. It's actually the glue of humanity, and it's there within everyone. Everyone has reservoirs of it. And you can achieve business success through compassion. And I think everyone must experiment with that if we haven't done enough of that before.
Mm-hmm. I love this comment from Rakesh. Leader who can be able to sustain the business and hold on his own employees during these crucial times will go a long way in creating a culture of trust, ownership, and accountability.
Absolutely.
You know, most recently, we had a little conversation with a group of HR professionals, and we've received quite a number of new insights of the way they were approaching HR. And one of the companies was doing this: human first, resource second. They were building their technology around their staff. How can they adopt technologies to make work a bit easier, a bit more for some of the staff to be able to get things done? I think this is a really interesting approach to business now, being centered to that. Okay, so let's look at other questions that is coming in. Sorry, the questions are really running really fast. So let's see. Okay, leadership must be empathetic and compassionate and caring. Well,
yeah,
this concept of, yeah, sorry, please.
I was just saying that the Q&A box has got some rather interesting comments. I'm just picking up the one that Rajesh has here. He says that the big challenge in digital transformation is that we get so caught up in fixing the process and technology while not paying enough attention to people part. And I think you're just absolutely right, Rajesh, because you'll find that in very many organizations, where adoption has gone awry, it's because they did not capture voice at the start of being able to configure the new process. So, you're just bang on. It's because we've not done the design thinking. We've just not involved the customer. And we've gone, a close group of people have decided they know what is right. And we've not spread, the ask in terms of being able to understand what do people really need. And more often than not, it goes awry at these times because your configuration is not really catering to everyone. And over a period of time, you don't get adoption. There's another one here which says, as leaders, we're expected to pursue the needs and wants of stakeholders. There is an increasing need to manage business, generate revenue, and report profitability during the unprecedented times. How do I, as a leader, balance between business and compassion? What would you suggest for leaders to do so that they can manage effectively the perception of their people while keeping their stakeholders happy? So I think it's a great question. It's from Raymond, and I think it's a great question. Raymond, my response to you is that bear in mind the 6 intelligences. I think they're going to hold you in good stead. They're going to be extremely important. And I'm going to ask you to be able to look at where do you stand on the 10 shifts that we spoke about. The more you move to the right, you're going to be able to do better to your people. And what I mean by that is that wanting to deliver results, wanting to be able to look good, wanting to be able to remain profitable, all of this requires you to be able to, in the new times, write new playbooks to be able to integrate your people, remain compassionate, remain connected, remain communicative, let everyone, last man standing, know. We don't play power games within the organization with information at this time. We pivot and change if something's not working. We don't let people remain bewildered, especially in the remote working from home. We integrate them in the decisions that we're making. Such a significant part of this is within the purview of your own leadership. It has little to do with your other stakeholders. It's embedded in your own leadership style. For example, remaining hopeful with people, integrating them in what it is that you're trying to do. Like one of the comments that Daryl called out earlier is that it's going to build accountability. It's going to build trust towards you. It's going to get people to be able to believe in your point of view or what it is that you're asking them to do next. And the fact that you're listening and you're also bringing in their perspective to the problem-solving process will make this our problem as compared to your problem. Also, this directive style of leadership often ends up with the leader holding the baby and the bathwater. So when things go wrong, people don't feel accountable because they believe your directive and you're telling us what to do. We just simply did what you asked us to do. And if it's not worked out, then it's your problem. So involve people, trust them, share with them, remain transparent. I think some growth mindset will help very significantly. And by the way, fixed mindset and growth mindset is also a continuum. And we can be different things at different points in time. So I invite you to be able to look at how you're dealing with in the context of efforts, how you're solving problems, how you're dealing with mistakes, and seek more feedback so that you're able to come closer to your people and get them all to be able to own what it is that your organization is trying to achieve together. Yeah. Any other question, Darren?
I'm interested in Prasanna's question, actually. Learned optimism versus learned helplessness captures current mindsets very well. Would you say that a new challenge to leadership is to identify these critically, including themselves, and evolve their responses to empowerment, delegation, and encouragement with a new impetus?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that it is eminently possible. I have seen organizations do this. You intervene. Like if you saw an unsafe behavior of someone behaving in an unsafe manner, you would intervene. And you intervene in the same manner when you see a behavior that's unsafe or a behavior that is risky within the organization. Leaders can do this to each other, which is to be able to stop people who are talking negative and to say, no, I don't think it's that bad. And you intervene and you see, I think that this can be done. And I think this is going to require some degree of coaching if people persist with a pessimistic or a negative orientation and they're not aware of it, is to create awareness for this. Time for top leadership to have tough conversations with people where you know that they're kind of breaking morale instead of building morale for teams. There was someone relating to me saying that in one of their team meetings, their leader told all of them during a catch-up call that, there's going to be no demand for our product on the other side. I can tell you that we are all doomed. This organization was already having a tough time even before the COVID-19, and now we're going to have absolutely no scope to escape this. We're all done for. I'm looking for another job. I recommend all of you start looking for another job as well. Now, I'm just wondering, what is the hope? Because after that, not that they've actually asked their employees to go. And in the privacy of his conversation with his people, he's actually just broken their morale into smithereens. What should they be believing in going forward? How can they rebuild something, or how would they expect to rebuild a business if the leaders give it up on the organization? So leaders cannot afford to give up. I think the best way to show heroism in these times is to not give up.
For sure. And actually, I'm just asking myself about the new impetus that Prasanna is talking about. The new impetus, I'm just asking myself, would there be situations in the organization where one of your employees or one of your colleagues might be doing something that he or she has never done before, and it could potentially be hurtful for the department or for himself or herself? The question is, how then do we approach this situation? I'm using this figuratively, but perhaps a simple task like, say, for example, if one of your, let's say your office boy is asked to deliver a package to a certain town out there, and he tells you, no, I'm not going to deliver it today. I don't want to deliver it today because I'm not ready. And he kind of shuts it away for the rest of the day. How do we deal with these kinds of situations? What are your thoughts?
I mean, this is where your social intelligence really comes in, which is your ability to deal with all kinds of people and influence them. And I think that these are going to be times where you're going to require a lot of these conversations, because people could hesitate to do anything, maybe even travel to another town for work. And why just an office boy? I think office boys are more likely to say yes because they want to keep their jobs, even if they're running a risk. And I think we might perhaps be up against this from people who are qualified and, who are in mid to senior positions, who might say, I see this as a risk and I'm not sure I'm ready to be able to do it. And I think it's for organizations to be able to consider what the challenge is. Is there a remote way of being able to do it? How well-founded is this concern that the individual really has? And what is the organization willing to do to be able to work around this? So I think people have to start talking to people more, understanding what's happening. There's going to be a tremendous scope for counseling. And you're going to be in the moment having to take a decision on whether you want to take the risk or you don't want to take the risk to be able to do what it is that you're trying to do. And if individuals are unhappy or they're feeling unsafe doing things, it must be given due consideration, unless they're being unreasonable, in which case we need to talk to them about it. But say, are they being unreasonable, or are they just fearful? Are they just concerned? Do they believe they're carrying too much of responsibility at home and cannot afford the risk? What is the concern? And someone needs to talk this to. So, these nameless, faceless groups of people, we can't afford that anymore. What tends to happen when we are leading 5,000 people, 10,000 people, 15,000 people is everybody, it's a mass of faceless, nameless kind of people. The organizations must find the a system, a process of being able to make sure that each one is feeling connected with, that there is a voice for each person. I think the role of HR as trusted advisor and go-to person has multiplied. It's multifold now in this current environment. And as much for the leadership to be able to take the time to understand what concerns. So does this mean another kind of leadership, another brand of leadership, a more compassionate and understanding leadership, a leadership that is able to be balanced between the business and the people? Yes, that's the need of the hour. And that's why we're calling it human-centered leadership.
I love that. Thank you very much, Dr. Sujaya. And I think I'm very conscious of the time right now. So we're about like just a few minutes from the time that we have agreed. I think the question we now, just to end off this session, the question is human-centric transformation and being empathetic, right? Like what you mentioned, being human-centered at the time. The question is, when is the time? And I think perhaps this time, the whole time would be the time. And we probably have to have more conversations like you mentioned.
Yes.
Being leaders, we need to restart, reinvent ourselves and to rethink what we're really there for, what are our true values, and how do we care for that next colleague or that next partner and employee. Any closing, Dr. Sujaya?
I think I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been in the audience here today. I really enjoyed talking to all of you. I've loved answering the questions. Thank you for indulging us and participating in the polls. And do join us in Daryl's session on the other half. So I'm just going to say thank you. We'll be in touch. There's more to come from us, from both Daryl and me, and from the two organizations that we represent, that we're going to absolutely keep in touch, create a new community of design thinkers and people who are passionate about this theme. More knowledge series, more research. We recommend that you participate in the researches with us, and again, more white papers, more articles, all of that. So we want to create a very vibrant community together with all of you. So please stay in touch. We want to be able to exchange stories on how it is that organizations are using design thinking through the recovery and the resurgence phase. And we invite you to be able to also experiment, build this capability among your leaders. And it's most opportune, it's most timely, it's most relevant. I recommend strongly that you join this journey of being able to drive change using design thinking.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening to me. And see you on the other side. Yeah, 4:30 to listen to Daryl. All right. Take care, everybody. Take care. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Daryl. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Dr. Sujaya. Mm-hmm.